son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast, and we're back again for another interesting conversation with the one, the only, B. Holmes guy himself, Benny Holmes.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Welcome back. What did we talk about last? What was the last thing we talked about?
I remember there was underground alien military bases.
Oh, maybe Phil Dumbs, maybe, or Phil Schneider.
We definitely talked about the summer camp.
Bohemian Grove. Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, this one surprised me, okay? Because there's a bunch of ways that I found myself into this hole, but I'm interested to find out how you found your way into this hole. For those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, because we haven't even said what we're talking about yet, we're going to talk about the theory of the second sun. So there's a thing now, apparently, where people can't tell if it's a lens flare or there's a second sun as they're taking videos of the sun. But that's not necessarily a new thing. There's always been theories about rogue planets, rogue anomalies in our solar system. But anyways. How did you find yourself thinking about this?
Okay. Let's be clear. There's like two totally separate things to this. I'm sorry, I'm getting an echo. I don't know what to do about it.
What?
I'm getting an echo. Anyway.
Oh, headphones.
Headphones. Yeah, I got not hear that. There's the scientific thing where they actually have measurements that say that there's likely something else out there.
Yeah.
I mean, before they discovered Neptune, they thought this, and then they found Neptune, and then Pluto. Yada yada yada. But then there's the other part where the whole falling into this nemesis sun or whatever, and apparently Nibiru or something.
Well, yeah, kind of, yeah, sure.
Yeah. I heard about it because I worked at this health food store in town. I don't really need any other say anything else.
Of course, yeah. As one does. That's where we all hear about Nibiru for the first time, is the health food store. Yeah.
A sweet old lady. I helped her groceries out, and then she started talking to me about the electromagnetic waves coming off of her power lines, and
the 5G's roasting her balls. No.
It led down this rabbit hole where I asked my coworker about it, and she was like, "Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, the government is
snorting lines of granola in the parking lot,
controlling you." And she also went off into this tangent about chemtrails,
of course, yeah,
being not sowing anything, but that they were doing them to actually block the second sun so he couldn't see it. Oh, that was what she said. Yeah.
Okay.
Some kind of filter or something. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
That was the first I heard about it. And then again, I've seen various legitimate science articles that talk about, there's, possibilities that these comets are moving in this way because there's
another body out there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There's a large planet out beyond Pluto.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is definitely the Cliff Notes version of this argument here. The chemtrail connection, that is the first.
Yeah.
I've never heard that, but that is hilarious. And, you know, like going down, not to get down that rabbit hole immediately, but like going down that rabbit hole a bit, one of the main ideas is they want to put clouds in the sky to cover up something. You know, some people say it's UFOs. Some people say, I guess it's the second sun, or just like shit that they're doing that they don't want us to see. So they'll, you know, blanket an area with clouds so they can do whatever they want.
Gotcha.
Again, that's just, you know, that is part of the lore. That is canonical, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Canonical or non-canonical?
No, it works. It's like it's a part of the. I may not have been aware of it, but I don't doubt that this has been discussed in those circles as if it were a fucking fact by that lady and a very small number of her closest associates. But I've honestly, I've been hearing more and more about it. Definitely around the eclipse. But even a little bit before then, and it was all just TikTok videos. Like I would just see a bunch of videos. Now, I'm going to, full disclosure here, I think 90% of any video that someone posts of the second sun is just a lens flare. Okay? That's realistically what it is. Okay?
Wait, are you saying there's people who have videos where they say...
Yeah, I've got them pulled up. I'll show you some. So, like, they're like, what am I seeing? Is this two suns? Great. But most times it's like a false reflection through the clouds kind of deal, camera lens flare, using your camera inside your car through your car's window, like that kind of shit. But there are a couple that are becoming like, you know, or at least the ones that were, you know, making their ways around the internet that are a little bit harder to explain away, but we'll just I was muting all of these. So like I've seen a couple of these where people are showing literally two sunsets.
Wow, that's pretty good.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's it for that one.
Pretty sure that's
this one. Like this is for sure lens flare.
Yeah, totally.
And that could be too, depending on how they're looking. You know, is this through a window? Is there cloud coverage?
Right.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
Too late for that. Okay.
So,
this is great. I love this. Wonderful.
And I mean, like that. This is actually a common phenomenon.
Yeah, that's a sundog right there.
This is just
that is also.
I mean, it's literally just cloud with holes punching through. You're seeing one sun back here, but it's coming out at two spots because of the cloud coverage. And that it looks like a lens flare. You see what I mean? Like most of these are not. You know.
Wait, so like I don't know anything about this. Is that the idea? Is that there's just like a second sun just like right there?
Well, I guess this is
all the time.
This is why I wanted to make sure that you were aware or up to speed on Nibiru, because Nibiru, this is how I first got into like they don't want us seeing what's in the sky, like down that whole conspiracy, right? And this was more around 2012 because there was all the hype about us reaching the end of the Mayan calendar and end of the world, you know. But they were also, and I've got this. I just want to scroll through here. There's one video I for sure, like this is for sure lens flare. They're looking. You can see it's like, is this two suns? No. But the ones where they, you know, pan from side to side, this too, same thing. Just
again, it's all sundogs.
This one's interesting.
Oh, that's a good one.
I guess occurring at the same time as the eclipse. And I've seen a couple good, like, two moons. So there's a number of different ways we're going to fucking skin this cat. Before we go before we go into Sumer and Nibiru and all of that,
Okay.
which the lore is kind of fucking deep, I just kind of want to briefly, like, this is a common sight too.
Yeah.
But I also think this is some weird, like, projection effect from the sun against clouds or lens flare.
Okay.
Because there's another lens flare up there. You see what I'm saying? Like, you can kind of see it.
That's what. Okay.
I don't know.
Like,
It's not definitive fucking proof to me that there's two fucking suns. You know?
sorry. It just, yeah. What? Even putting aside all the probably pretty straightforward explanations for this, like, is the idea that, I mean, 200 years ago when the government wasn't covering this up, did it not exist? Did people just not talk about the fact that there was two suns in the sky? How does that?
Well, you know, I also
Was it not there?
Okay, so there's here's where we get into the jelly. Okay, there's a lot of weird stuff that we can see now with cameras everywhere, and in particular, cameras can see things in ways that our eyes can't, like night vision and like infrared, and depending on the frame rate, just capturing stuff in high resolution that our eyes cannot see. We can't detect it.
Okay.
So there is an element of, like, we're seeing things now, including UFO style shit in the sky. We're seeing stuff now that we didn't see before because you got a million cameras recording, but then those cameras can also see into spectrums that our eyeballs can't. There's also, I had just heard about this recently, but there's like a bunch of hilarious theories popping up around Starlink, Elon Musk's like global internet, right? So I saw some YouTube threads or TikTok threads where people were like, Starlink is reverse projecting the sky onto the dome so we can't see what's going on up there, and that's why we're getting all these weird artifacts because we're holding up our phone, but it's a hologram, man. It's a hologram, dude. And that it's fun. But I mean, dude, the fucking Nibiru shit, the Nibiru shit, that's thousands of years old. That story has been known for thousands of fucking years.
Tell me this story. I want to hear this story.
So
are we ready for that?
I don't necessarily consider myself to be an authority on this because this is a whole fucking thing in and of itself. Sumeria, but recently, knowing what I know about Sumer, Egypt, and the mystery schools, there's a lot of strange developments that have occurred recently that are like kind of tying all these things together. So there are a few strings of thought here. There's the string of thought that the timeline that we're operating on is not right, or at least what we were told was that what year it is. It's not that year. Human history is much older than that.
Oh, is this like the lost century type thing, or is this something else?
Kind of, but it gets even fucking crazier. Like, this is gonna get so fucking weird. And it kind of ties into the podcast from last week, which is why I'm happy that we're doing this.
Cool.
There's this new stream of thought that's reanalyzing the stories that our religions are based around. And we're finding, and this is not new, people have known this for a very long time, we're finding that a lot of today's dominant religions stem from older religions when they just change the names and the characters in the story.
Sure.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
This is not new. People have known this for a long time. Okay. What we may be finding now is that the fanciful accountings, or our perception of fanciful accountings of Egypt and Sumer, might actually be more accurate than we're thinking. So we look to the lores of these cultures and we look to what we can tangibly find and like see where is there some overlap. Okay, so bear with me here. Last week we did an episode where we talked about the people who have thought they think they have discovered Noah's Ark, and it's that sounds ridiculous, right? But then you look at what these people have found, and you understand that the places where they are relatively accurate to where those things would have been, and there's tangible shit on Mount Ararat that looks like a boat.
Okay.
A huge fucking boat.
Okay.
So, and this other guy, Ron Wyatt, who also said he discovered it like further down at the base of the mountain. But then all these other areas in Saudi Arabia that are basically where, you know, Moses split the rock, and all these major epic biblical moments occur. Like, again, still in that same area. The reason I'm explaining that is because what if Christianity took that story from somebody else?
Okay.
And I'm saying that because the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Sumerian story, has a Noah character, right?
Okay.
So,
I knew there's like flood stories in a lot of
and that's kind of what I'm getting at. There's a couple big names that are like the proponents of this idea, and they are basically saying that the timeline we have is incorrect, that before the last ice age there was like a very advanced scientifically civilization that got eradicated by some kind of cataclysmic event, some cataclysmic flood. In the story of the Anunnaki, the Sumerian story, they talk about the flood. The flood occurs when Nibiru comes around. So I'm going to try and rephrase all the things I was just talking about. We're reanalyzing the stories of lore of the cultures that have been on this planet. We're finding a lot of similarities. We're finding a lot of similarities around a different timeline, and there being some kind of cataclysmic event that may itself be cyclical on large swaths of time. And there's even a lot to suggest now that Egypt, they inherited all that shit from Sumeria. They weren't responsible for building all of those things. That Egypt is what emerged from the ashes of Sumeria, whenever that, you know, whenever that really occurred.
But can't they like date a lot of those? Like, what specifically are you talking about? Because there's a lot of that stuff that they can date pretty accurately. Understanding.
For sure. I'm telling you the theories that are out there. This is the all of the lore around this. Back when I found out about Nibiru was just like it was 2012. It was lumped into anyone who talking about like a 2012 conspiracy. Nibiru was on Planet X. So in the process of looking up this shit, I found like there's a lot of information on Planet 9, Planet X, like the legitimate search for a larger body out in our solar system. Yeah, that's on like a hyper elliptical orbit that only comes close to us, you know, every so often. These are obviously like serious journals, but the point of what I'm saying here is that they do not believe in Nibiru, but they do believe that there is this other body out there that we may at some point discover.
Okay. Oh wow.
And cool. This ties into that because a lot of people, typically the people who are like NASA is, you know, faking everything and they're not going out into space at all and everything's filmed and the Earth is flat, like that kind of shit. But not really, because the Earth can't be flat and Nibiru exists out there, or maybe it can. I don't know. I'm not willing to entertain that. But basically, the story that I was talking about, the Nibiru cataclysm, would have been one of the many iterations of that planet coming by, and like, basically, have you seen the movie Prometheus like the
Yeah,
prequel?
yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So that story is modeled pretty heavily after the
Gotcha.
Sumerian. Like that whole, if you imagine Prometheus
Right.
set in Iraq, Turkey,
Right.
that's that's where they got the idea.
There's some guy melting into
There's
ooze or
like
whatever.
human alien hybrid shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's big time. Like the whole story is Nibiru is their home planet, and they come to this planet because they need gold. Like gold, they need to spray gold in their atmosphere, and that will save their planet or something. So they genetically modify a number of creatures to mine the planet, ultimately one of them being humans. There's a hilarious side tangent here where the I don't know if you've ever read into like what people think about the genetic manipulation of humans, but there's a couple ideas. One, our genetics are so close to pigs, a lot of people think that at some point in the past we were like there was some kind of like alien experimentation to make a more sentient pig, and that's what humans are. Like there's a whole fucking thing you can go down about that.
I think the like German word, this is probably totally wrong, but I think the German word for humans, I heard this like literally translated as long pig. So
I'm okay with that. It's hilarious. But that's a whole tangent.
Okay.
And there's also a tangent where, bananas, like the origin of the banana tree, like tracing the genus of that plant, it's hard to find what it just kind of emerges out of nowhere. And because of that, primates can exist in great number, and because they can exist in great, there's like that's a whole.
I love
conspiracy.
that it's based off of Donkey Kong, basically.
Well, I mean, everything human related would be, but effectively, we're one of the creatures that were created, and we're with some god genetics, but we're just lowly humans, and there were many times where they wanted to just erase all of them. But basically, what I'm getting to here is they understand that their planet is coming back, and when their planet comes back, it's going to be cataclysmic for any creatures on Earth. That's fine, because they'll just go back to their planet. They don't give a shit. But all the creatures on Earth, they don't tell them, and they're just going to be like, peace, as this, thing comes so close that it disrupts, tidal movements and tsunamis and earthquakes and whatever. So, Enki, who's the leader,
in like Gilgamesh.
Excuse me, he's just the god. I guess maybe the god in charge.
Okay.
Enki. But he picks Utnapishtim.
Okay.
This is Noah. This is what Noah is based off of.
Okay.
Okay. So the reason why I was telling you before, like a lot of this stuff is really starting to glue together for me, is like this is shit I've been reading about for a long time, and there was no real serious thread. But what I'm coming to realize is that the idea, all the shit that we just discussed, has been an idea for a very long time, and at some point it just was stopped. People stopped talking about it. In the 20s and 30s, this shit was known. This shit was being discussed then. But then a couple things happened that distracted people's focus for a few years. So we stopped worrying about fanciful shit. And 2 world wars. But then this book. So this book is written by this guy. It's called The Secret Teachings of All Ages. It's written by this guy named Manly Palmer Hall. Manly Palmer Hall is the closest thing we would have ever gotten to an Aristotle or a Plato. He could like recall books worth of material. He gave lectures. He has a library that's just it's just focused, devoted to esoteric texts and like the history of mystery schools dating back to the first known Sumerian, like in Sumer in Egypt.
Okay.
This book he wrote in like the fucking 30s, and he's talking about all of these ideas that, and this again, in the mystery schools, this is like a big focus. It's the allegory of the stories. Okay, what is the message of the stories?
Yeah.
The Christian stories are an amalgamation of all the stories that came before, including some pagan traditions and stories.
Okay.
And all of the world's religions, it's all sun worship.
Yeah.
It's all sun worship.
Yeah.
And, you know, we see the modern Christianity, we worship like, you know, Christ-like, God-like, humanoid creatures in the sky.
Are you talking about like how the whole like death and rebirth story is tied to like the sun, like basically the sun going away and then coming back, you know, in winter, back in 100%. The spring? Okay. Yeah.
The equatorial shifts, right?
Right.
Yes, absolutely. That's what they were. That's what it was back then. And over time, people just started getting so caught up on the goddamn words that they forgot what the fucking story's talking about.
Okay.
But if we're going down that train of thought, that all of what exists now is an amalgamation of what came before it, with certain things filtered out, Sumer is the most accurate telling of those tales that we have. Now, again, most of what we have found from Sumeria and chiseled in fucking stone is probably an allegorical concept that is relating to the movement of stars in the sky. That's how you plant your crops. That's how you know when to harvest them. That's how you know when to get inside and hunker down. And one thing I think they understood at a much deeper level than this layer of humanity, this iteration does, is the connection that we have like to the forces of the universe. And they're, of course, the known forces that like the moon and the sun affect on us. They're you know, essential for the systems to continue spinning on this planet. But what I think the ancients understood a little bit more is what the other stars had an effect on you. So, and again, that's another part of this book, is that you spend enough time reading the tales from the mystery schools. There's many meanings. It's not just one. And there may, in some contexts, be literal interpretation, the things that actually did happen. Metaphorically, they had to contain a more complex concept in a simpler way so that the message could be transmuted into the future, but also not profaned by an ignorance. Like somebody who didn't understand how to interpret it correctly. So none of this solves anything, but what I'm saying is that there's a very strange stacking of strange shit around the ancients' understanding of the movement of the heavenly bodies, which was just as advanced as ours. And
I mean,
they didn't have satellites yet, but they understood the mechanics, like the physics. They got it well enough to have civilizations harvesting food for hundreds of thousands of people. You know
so are you talking about basically that a lot of these stories may have had sort of coded, not being the right word because it was understood by people, but like that it was an allegory for when this star is here, that's when the rains come, or when
that is a component.
Okay.
It's not if that is a component. That is actually a component. And there's people who've written whole fucking books about it. That is a component.
Okay.
But then there's also the interpretation of that and how it relates to you as a person.
Yeah.
Like emotionally, when these things occur, this is when the water will come, whatever the water represents. You know, you as the initiated person would understand how to interpret that correctly. And then there's also the component that's like, again, like the stuff, when people were writing about things in the past, they had less words. They didn't have as many concepts as we have now, right? So, you know, talking about Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the places that they supposedly found in the process of finding the ark. And the evidence there is like this very unique sulfur. It only exists there. It's almost pure sulfur. And if you like light it on fire, it's like what the whole point of what I'm saying here is that they think that they have found evidence to suggest that there was a place, a city here, and maybe some comet came in from the sky, maybe some, you know, asteroid, some other space object came in, localized, spit down pure sulfur, like sulfur that isn't found anywhere else on Earth, and destroyed that town. Now, whether or not God chose to do that himself, or that was just pure fucking chance, and the legend of that gets recorded because that seems significant, and you know, again, more than likely, the significance of that story in the Bible, if interpreted correctly, would tell you astronomically why that happened. Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
I do.
You have to look at any of the stuff that was written back then like that, because that is how they were writing it.
Yeah.
The fucking scribes and elders, the only people that could fucking read and write, those people were packing even these motherfucking dudes on stone tablets. Yeah. Like, it's deep. It's very, very deep. Now, that's not to say everyone has interpreted correctly, and most of the lore of Nibiru and this, you know, other planet with another civilization that will come and destroy ours.
Okay.
Oh, the cat wants to come. Cool. Oh, geez. All right, technical difficulties. Oh, we're doing it. Here we are. We're back again.
Sorry about that.
Did the cat just totally cut you off?
The cat literally turned off my computer.
That is incredible. That's what I figured. Yeah, she stepped right in the right spot. Anyway, so the proponent, the real spreader of this information is a guy named Zachariah Sitchin.
Okay.
And even the guy that I was telling you about that says he discovered the Ark, his name is Ron Wyatt.
Uh-huh.
Both of these guys are super into what they believe, right?
Yeah.
And Ron Wyatt is like a super hardcore Christian, so this confirms his story. He's committed.
Yeah.
You know, I don't trust the King James interpretation of the Bible as much as I interpret Ron Wyatt's interpretation of the Bible, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, obviously you take this shit with a grain of salt, but there is a lot of stuff that has been discovered recently and definitely talked about more about there just being a lot of sites around Sumer, even in Egypt, but all over Turkey, that suggest that there were advanced civilizations prior to the last ice age.
Okay.
And again, like most of the things that have been found are sites that are similar to Stonehenge, star worship, sun worship. That's what this shit is all about.
So what is this? How is this connected to the Nibiru thing?
Well, the Nibiru thing really ties into that. That there's another planet that's way out there, okay? And they created us and use us to farm this planet of resources.
Right.
And every cyclical tens of thousands of years, there's a cataclysmic event that destroys all life on Earth.
Okay.
That's the whole conspiracy. So
Is that-
why would they want to protect us from knowing that? Well, because people would panic.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like if you woke up tomorrow and the news was like, all right, everybody, we got 30 years. That's it.
Like
what do you think-
everybody would be relieved. I think.
Yeah. We would all burn it down in 20 years. We'd show Nibiru, you know.
Yeah.
But that's if you're trying to understand like why does the conspiracy exist? That's the conspiracy exists for that. They're hiding that because they don't want us to know that not only are we going to get wiped out, but that we're literally a science experiment and this is a prison planet and we're just here to farm it for its resources.
So the story is that there were these advanced pre-Sumerian civilizations, and then Nibiru came and was like, "Hey, get back to mining gold or whatever." He killed everybody. And now we're like rebuilding.
Okay. Here we go. So there's two different things we're talking about. We could talk about here.
Oh,
okay. One is like the Sumerian Nibiru, that whole line. The other is what am I trying to think of here? One of them Nibiru factors in. One of them Nibiru doesn't.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So within the context of the Nibiru timeline, they wouldn't want people to know that. And the only reason we made it this far is because of this character, this Utnapishtim. He's Noah. He saved, he built the ark and he got everybody on there. And at the end of the cataclysmic flood, he rebuilt at the base of Mount Ararat. And the whole Christian story and timeline, that's not when those stories, maybe they did happen, but those stories we know for a fact are based on older stories that they didn't come up with. Right. And what I'm saying is that this is the story that the story of Moses is not the story of Moses. It's the story of this guy. They repurposed it.
Wait, so does this guy? Sorry to go back to the Nibiru thing again.
No. This is totally on point.
This Noah guy, did he say that there's this planet? He knew there was a cataclysm coming?
Yeah, okay, so they didn't tell any of the humans, but they had a special affinity for him. Okay. Enki did anyways, and because again, God's crossbred with humans, and Enki's contemporaries were like, we have to destroy them. And Enki was like, well, I want to keep some. So he told Utnapishtim and had him build the ark. Like, it is the story. Cataclysmic flood, base of Mount Ararat. Like, it is the same fucking story. It originated from the same area of the globe. Like, this should be a foregone conclusion for most people at this point.
I think it is.
You know what I mean? Like, all of these things occurring loosely around the same time. The stories are as similar as they are geographically. It's like literally the same space. So again, the Nibiru is what causes the cataclysmic flood that Utnapishtim has to build the ark for to save humanity. And we rebuilt from that. That's the whole, in a nutshell. That's kind of what all of the different pieces of lore are kind of pointing to, at least for me, and there's a couple other people. So there's one guy who's super knowledgeable on.
Wait, before we go any further, I'm just curious, what do you personally think? Like, was there a cataclysm, and if so, what was it?
I mean, I don't know, dude. I don't know. I'm not one to necessarily believe the fucking stories in the Bible. I never have, especially when I know that realistically that the literal translation is not what the metaphorical meaning is of that story, right? And it's that's really its intent, and the intent is to track the movement of the stars.
Right.
That's what I for sure believe, because I have seen I have read and seen so much shit at this point where it's like, that's not new. People knew that a long time ago, and it's been like recently forgotten or suppressed, for whatever reason. But the more I'm looking at this fucking timeline is fucked situation, it just doesn't make sense. Like, I see a lot of these ancient sites that are, 20, 30, 40,000 years old, but the timeline says humans weren't humans, and they definitely weren't doing that. They were hunter-gatherer at best.
Right.
But then again, we also know, like, one thing that's been tripping me out is like the amount of new shit they're finding with LiDAR in the Amazon.
Yeah.
Like every couple months they find like a 60,000, like it's the deeper incredible. They go, the more they find. Yeah. Oh my God. But that's why it's been tripping me out recently, because it's like, maybe I don't think it's a fucking coincidence that all these cultures that are building the same types of structures, that are thriving in the ways that they are, I don't think it's a coincidence. And honestly, anymore, I feel like it's all fucking connected. Not to say they were all a part of one proto-civilization that got wiped out by a cataclysm, but they're very connected. Their symbols, their stories, the characters, like the gods, the hyper specific styles of construction of stuff. I don't know. It just seems like the same information mutating over time, and maybe humanity isn't 6,000 years old.
Right.
Maybe we're 150,000 years old. I
think that's the actual number.
They've found proto-humans that are older than that. I'm pretty sure at this point, 300,000 years old. So this
absolutely. I mean,
I guess what the real conspiracy here is that they want, the powers that be want us to think that this is the farthest we've ever gotten as a species. And what I'm thinking now is that maybe we've gotten further before, but we just got wiped out by a cataclysmic event. Like, honestly, in the scheme of shit, what the fuck would we know if a planet on a hyper strange orbit just came up out of nowhere? It's only recorded once every so long ago that everyone who would like adhere to monitoring that would have died, and no one alive then would care,
Yeah.
It's on a 3,600 year orbit. It's like life is so fragile on this planet, and there's so little that we do know about the processes that exist. Like, we're one super volcano away from being completely erased. And honestly, we're an ice age away from having every trace of our society, except for what is chiseled into fucking stone, or like gone. Like, over the course of 10 or 20,000 years, everything would be dust. Think about that.
Well, I think that's an open question. Is like, what would, like, 10 or 20,000 years of, let's say everything just stops right now. 10 or 20,000 years, what would remain? What would you be able to find? Just through modern archaeological techniques and stuff. What could you find?
Yeah, I don't know.
And I think that, like, there would probably be evidence, from what I understand, like, of major cataclysms. Like, if you're looking at old rocks, you would see evidence of this various stuff. But what's interesting is what you touched on in terms of the timeline of human, like, prehistory, and how much that story has changed in the last 10 years. And I mean, just like the stuff with like Neanderthals, and the fact that we lived alongside all these other kinds of hominids.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And just also in terms of what were we capable of? You know, we have all these evidences of stone tools, but there's wooden tools and stuff. And personally, I don't think that it's possible that like we could have had anything advanced in the same like way technologically that we have now. But it's a very interesting idea what you were talking about with like stories and just that, you know, civilization being advanced in a different way than we think of it. So that could have been around for a while.
Hear me out. This is where it will get strange. In all the esoteric texts and in all of these cultures that built these megalithic structures, there's this like in the lore, somewhere in the construction, there's a focus on a certain set of numbers, frequencies, vibration. A lot of people speculate, how did they build these things? And there's many different methods I've seen. People have done models of how like they constructed the pyramid, and a lot of them are super tangible. It's like they absolutely could have done that. They had all those things, and you know, hundreds of thousands of people working on this shit. But there's like, what if instead of us building motors, what if from the get-go humanity only focused on harnessing energy from the earth, from the sun, through various methods, and that's all the energy that they use and consume? Their life was based around a completely different set of rules, completely different set of practices, and frequency, vibration, the knowledge and understanding of the mathematics of sound were coveted. You know, the Pythagorean schools, mystery schools, like that was like a requirement. But he got that shit. All the Greeks got that from Egypt, and the Egyptians got it from the Sumerians. And this goes even into South America. All of the megalithic cultures of South America, Mexico, North America. You know, dude, we have pyramidal type structures all over America. You know what they're called? Mounds.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting thing where the like Mayans. I mean, wasn't that long ago. Even Mayans, the Egyptians. The Egyptians weren't that long ago. But they they developed all these crops that were way better than anything that Western civilizations had at that point. Yeah. Well, and then you just go look at their lore. You look at their story, their origins. There's a lot of overlap. And again, they're building similar type structures, separated by thousands of miles, thousands of years. They're working from the same set of tools, if you understand what I'm saying. So and again, like the focus, and this is becoming a thing now that renewable energy is such a thing, but like harnessing natural magnetic properties of shit and using that to harness electricity, solar, wind, hydro, like simple physical properties of the earth. How do we use that to power? And that a lot of the stuff, the math, the crazy scientific discoveries they're coming up with now, bro, he wrote this book in 1930. He's talking about a lot of this shit. I mean, I know you've gone down the Nikola Tesla rabbit hole. Like what that motherfucker was doing with electricity, he was wirelessly controlling a boat. He made an RC boat in the fucking 20s. And he was beaming it electricity from a fucking tower. This is not crazy fringe shit. This is physical properties of the universe that we live in. And it just so happens that we chose oil. They had electric cars in the early 1900s. But I think you're talking about two different things. Like in terms of ancient civilizations and those sorts of things that were like around 200 years ago, which still sat atop, like electric cars in the 1900s still rely on this huge network of manufacturing.
For sure. And I'm also
mathematics.
Have you heard of the Baghdad battery?
Yeah, I have. The like
thing,
pot.
Yeah, it was a thing that was discovered that theoretically could have held an electronic charge. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that these civilizations had flying cars. What I'm saying is that they were living in a symbiotic way with their environment, in a way that we chose different.
Right.
And there's enough magical properties from this planet if you harness them correctly. Like, dude, the sound rabbit hole is weird. I've definitely gone down the rabbit hole of, there's people that think that those structures were resonated into place, like acoustic levitation, which is now a real thing. Again, that science, I can pull up a video right now of acoustic levitation.
How would they have made those sound waves?
I'm not. The way that I heard it was, it would be like a huge number of priests with didgeridoo type things, like specific lengths based on the size of the rock, and playing at certain volumes to get it to vibrate into place instead of having. And I
really, really want that to be true.
Well, okay, so there's two things I'm going to show you.
Would be amazing.
This is acoustic levitation. Those are two speakers.
Wow.
And they're finding the resonant waves. They're the resonant, not the resonance, the standing, where the standing waves are in the cycle of that wave, and you drop a water droplet there, it'll suspend itself. So, and this is old. This video is 11 years old. They've been doing this shit since the fucking 60s. I've seen videos.
Sure.
This is super old hat.
Wow.
What was the other thing I was going to show you?
Yeah. I really hope somebody could try this with didgeridoos.
Yeah, so you can do it with a didgeridoo. It's the same based on...
you can?
Yeah, you can do it with small rocks. So based on the size of the didgeridoo, that is putting out a specific wave. That's mathematical. It's based on the size of the tube. And if you put enough power out of it, you can create a standing wave at the end of the thing. It's like a vacuum, but this guy will do it. That's a piece of paper, but I've seen people do it with rocks. I'll see if I can find it.
Just looked like he slurped it up.
Yeah, but he's pushing out, and the resonance of that tube makes you can put something there, and it'll just sit there. Excuse me. Let me see if I can find. Oh, here you go. They're also the reason it's a little rock or crystal or something hippie. Basically, the reason I'm saying that is because there's also been a really big push in the medical field to use resonance as a way to kill cancer cells and to destroy. Again, this is physical principle of matter shit.
Sure.
And this, if you look at a lot of the advanced scientific shit, in particular with what the CERN Large Hadron Collider is discovering, and you read some of these esoteric writings, they knew about this shit. They couldn't do it, but they understood.
What do you mean?
They understood molecular level shit about our reality that we are just now reaffirming scientifically, saying, yes, that is for sure the way that it is. 100% though. And again, don't believe me. People have, this is a 600-page book, okay? Yeah. People have written volumes on this shit. If you want to read about it, there's tons of legitimate scientists who are like, I was reading this shit, and then I was seeing this science, and I realized it was the same thing. They were talking about the same fucking thing. So that's what I mean to say. Like, I just don't know what to believe anymore. which is fine because it's always fresh and there's always something more to learn. But the Nibiru tangent is
we got way off that.
No, we were pretty good. We were pretty good about it. You know, I mean, for as much, dude, we could have talked about this for 6 hours.
Oh,
seriously.
I know. Yeah.
There's so many fucking, like, for me at least, Nibiru was kind of a gateway into the much deeper shit. But there's something to this one. And there's a lot of people on the internet that fucking think that they don't want us to see what's happening in the sky because we're gonna see some shit that we wouldn't be expecting there.
I have to bring up really quick that the Nibiru alien gold mining thing is a lot like the plot to Battlefield Earth. Just have to put that out there.
Wait, what is that with John Travolta?
Scientology movie.
Yeah. Well, and dude, bro, he probably fucking ripped that off. Like, you know what I mean? Like this. I'm
sure.
This is the crazy part to me is that this shit is ancient. This is known. This is not new stuff. Everything that we know is kind of based off of this lore to some extent. That's how pivotal to human history it is. And we just, you know, again, most people just look to the Bible and say that these are the stories that happened a couple thousand years ago, and that's it. So, I don't know.
Hopefully not too many people.
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. Too many people read this shit and 100% believe it literally, just like people who watch Battlefield Earth and believe Scientology. You know what I mean? People do anything for a buck these days.
By the way, like Patreon.
Yeah, exactly. Like and subscribe immediately. But on that note, it is time to say like and subscribe and check out the Patreon because we're reaching the end. We're reaching the end of the show here. And Benny, I just want to thank you again for coming on here and listening to this whole fucking thing. What are we doing next?
That's a great question. Man, I feel like we were touching on all kinds of like archaeology and old. I like some interesting real science questions and some interesting.
You know,
I don't know what. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to send you a video from that guy, Matt LaCroix. He was on this podcast and he summarizes. I am an ignoramus to this. Like, I'm just now piecing all of what I know and what I've learned together. This is all he focuses on. So he's got a more succinct, detailed telling of the story and what that means for the timeline being off a little bit.
Yeah.
And we can. You know, we did Nibiru. Maybe we actually dive deeper into the story of Sumerian.
Yeah.
Like the lore of Sumerian.
Yeah. I like that.
Which will be sick. Okay. Yeah, I love that. Well, again, thank you for joining. Is there anything you want to tell the people before we get out of here?
No. No. Do I look cool with my headphones? Yeah. No.
God damn my damn soundboard.
Goodbye, everybody.
All right, this has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Thank you to my guest. Thank you to everyone. Like, subscribe, check it out, Patreon. See you later.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva.
That's obnoxious.
Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva.
Literally no one cares.
For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod.
When will this end?
Thank you for listening. Now get back to work.
Move it along, buddy.